welcome to this POV review by AutoTopNL. My name is Max and we are here today with a very special car. I think, at least, I think this is really an iconic car. We have the Honda S2000. So, as many of you know, this car has the 2-liter 4-cylinder Vtec engine, which revs to almost 9,000 RPM, something like 8,800 RPM. And that is really cool and very rare these days because, you know, all the insane cars we drove the past few weeks, all of them were turbocharged and have like 700, 800, 600 horsepower, which is very cool, but I think there's still something so special about a naturally aspirated engine, and specifically this Vtec engine, which is sort of legendary, really. We have today here a 2000 model, so very early model. These were built from 1999 until 2009, so for 10 years, and they had a limited production of around 12,000 cars per year. So they built in total 110,000 of these Honda S2000, and well, I think it's quite pretty, actually. I think it's quite good looking. I mean, it's nothing really special, but the proportions are great with that long bonnet, short rear end. Those seats are right in front of the rear axle. And it has that true sports car shape. So the S2000 was given a big update in 2004, so 5 years in. And this is called the AP1, and then in 2004 came the AP2. In Europe it was sort of a facelift, but elsewhere it was really sort of a new model. And they changed the suspension, the wheels, the tires, and they gave it a better setup, because this car, the AP1, could be very tricky, especially in the wet. So they tried to fix that with that update. So they also went from brass to carbon fiber for the synchronizers in the gearbox, and you can recognize the AP2 model by the oval shaped exhaust pipes, and this has just the round ones. And the AP2 model also had different lights and different bumpers, so that was a real big update, sort of mid-life. So let's take a look under the bonnet at that magical Vtec engine. So old school with this brace, and there it is. So as you can see, there's the front axle going from there to there, and the engine is right here. So they have put the engine just behind the front wheels, giving it sort of a mid-engine, more balance. It has a 50-50 weight distribution as well. That's also why you are sitting so far to the back, because they needed to shift that weight a bit to the back because of that engine. And that's also one of the reasons they went for this 4-cylinder engine, because it was much lighter than a V6 or a 6-cylinder. And because they wanted this engine to be naturally aspirated, they really went through great lengths to get that power. So this produces 240 horsepower, 208 newton meters, which is not a lot. And that 240 horsepower is at 8,300 RPM. So the Vtec system, I will try to explain it sort of simplified. If I understand it correctly, there's a third camshaft, sort of a race spec camshaft, which is activated at about 6,000 RPM, which makes sure that the valves open earlier, further and for longer. So that means there's more fuel and oxygen coming into the engine, which means you get that sort of Vtec kicked in feeling that from 6,000 RPM it changes. It sort of has another gear, which is a really cool feeling and really unique. And this S2000 also does not share one part with regular Hondas. It also has aluminium forged pistons. Regular Hondas have cast iron ones. And it also has fiber reinforced metal in the cylinders with race tolerances. So they had to make this engine super strong, because that 9,000 RPM really is a strain on all those parts in the engine. And it shouldn't surprise you that this engine was Engine of the Year for 5 years in a row, which is cool because it's such a crazy engine. And to get that high amount of horsepower, 240 horsepower from a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, naturally aspirated, is really hard. So they truly try to find some extra horsepower here and there, and they even went so far to ditch the power steering pump and use an electronically operated power steering system, which meant they got 5 horsepower extra. So that is really cool. And that Vtec system, by the way, gives you about 100 horsepower extra. So enough about this car. I mean, there's a lot to tell, but I really want to drive it now, so let's take it for a drive. Okay, so driving the S2000. I have told you a lot about this car already, so I'm going to keep this short, mainly because I don't really fit in this car. I'm quite tall, 6'6", something like that, and I mean, I'm really crammed in here. So that's why it might look a bit weird on camera. But this S2000 weighs about 1220 kilograms, which is pretty light. It actually had one of the best power to weight ratios of any car available in 1999. So there were a couple of cars which had a better power to weight ratio, like the Ferrari F355, the Chevrolet Corvette, cars like that, which were much more expensive, of course. And there we go. Oh my god. Not shifting, not shifting, not shifting. It really feels like your brain has to adapt to the Vtec engine, because you really, at 6,000 it starts to get louder, more violent, and then you think, okay, now I have to shift, no, I have to shift, no, not yet, not yet, not yet. And there it goes. Oh, and that manual gearbox is just magnificent. It's super tight and it has great feel to it. And it really, I mean, this car really is all about contact with the car. And it also has a torsion limited slip diff at the rear for torque distribution. So this car really is for the driver, and I think that's really cool. And the engineering side of this car, I mean, that engine, the suspension, the chassis is really nice. The suspension is not too hard, so it seems like they really wanted to address two types of customers. So the people who wanted a real sports car, but also the 70-year-old man who just wants a Honda and tour with it, just go for a drive on a Sunday, because it can do both really well. Oh my god. Oh, that's so nice. And this car is seriously quick when that VTEC kicks in. So from like 6,000 RPM you can really feel that engine getting even more powerful. So let's turn around. And you know, when I just did that flooring this car, the sound, that's all engine. That's all engine noise. that exhaust really isn't that loud, and I mean that's on the one side that's cool because you can really enjoy that engine sound. On the other hand, you know, if you'd like to have some more sound, you have some kits available for this car to really get this car sounding like an F1 car. I mean, that I've seen some videos and this car can really scream if you have like a straight pipe. I mean, can you imagine this with a straight pipe? And you can even get some kits which will get this to 10,000 RPM. I mean, that's truly insane. You can get a launch control kit. I mean, there's so much available for this car. But I think if you want your S2000 to keep its value, you should keep it original. Because these cars are going up in value now, because less and less stock ones are left. Because everyone does that stuff I just said. Oh man! That engine and that gearbox are just such a great combination. And how about this interior? I mean, this is so cool and retro, with that digital dial down there, with that rev counter which goes over the top, and that digital speedometer, this red leather, red carpet. Yeah, this is really cool. And even this little radio, lovely shifter, aluminium knob with 6 gears. You can close the roof, of course, but we want as much sound as possible. Oh, I mean, this has to be one of the most engaging cars I've ever driven. The drivetrain really feels like a race car. I mean, that manual gearbox is so smooth and so well built. Makes me wonder where the guys that built this car have been in the 10 years after they started building this, because you have the S2000, the Civic Type R, the NSX, and that's about it. I mean, that Honda mojo really got lost somewhere along the way. Now, of course, they have the new NSX, which is supposed to be a monster. I hope we get to drive it sometime. That new Civic Type R is supposed to be a monster as well. But, you know, this just will never happen again. And that's really cool to drive it. And we'd like to thank the owner of the car for letting us drive it. We picked it up at Vtec Honda in the Netherlands. So if you're interested, take a look over there. They have one for sale. All right, thanks for watching, guys. We will see you at the next one. Bye.